I'm going to show you the round 7 matchup between Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana. Champion versus challenger, number 1 and number 2 on the rating list. And in fact, if Caruana could win this game, then he would overtake Carlsen on that live rating list. So a lot at stake here. And of course, both players wanting to kind of gauge the form they're in against each other before they meet in London in November. In fact, this game is the last time that they'll face each other before the World Championship match. So a lot at stake, the eyes of the world on this game. Carlsen with the white pieces, and Caruana not playing sidelines here. He plays the Petrov, the opening that has stood him in really good stead this year. And Carlsen, I think, makes a very practical decision. He plays the line with knight c3, which basically gives white just slightly easier play than black, because it means white can develop these bishops very quickly because there's no pawns there, whereas black is slightly hemmed in. But of course, black is very solid in this position, no real weaknesses in his pawn structure. But yeah, in practical terms, just a little bit easier for white to play than black. Now, queen d2 is the main move here, looking to castle queenside. Carlsen played bishop c4, which obviously prevents black playing the bishop to e6, or, well, one could still play it, but somehow not advisable here. So yes, Carlsen going his own way a little bit already in the opening. Castles from Caruana, and now Carlsen goes back to putting his king on the queen side. So this is the whole deal of this variation. White generally goes to the queen side, so kings on opposite sides of the board, and white generally would like to storm with his pawns on the king side. And black usually tries to find play in the middle of the board on that open e file. If white simply plays a rook to e1, then yeah, in all likelihood, pieces are going to be swapped off on the e file, and yeah, it's not dangerous at all. Really, in this variation, if white wants to try for an advantage, then it's necessary to get going on the king side. And here black has the usual dilemma of how you deal with the advanced h-pawn. Do you block it, or do you just leave it? How far do you let it roll? Do you let it roll all the way here, or do you block it on h5? Do you block it straight away? In fact, h5 is possible here. I know it looks a bit odd. It leaves this square a little bit weak, but it is a possible move actually. But Caruana plays in more orthodox way and looks to generate play on the e file. And now he decides to block the pawn, doesn't want to allow it to get to h6, very understandable, and h6 covers g5, preventing a white piece from going there. Only thing is, when you play h6, that of course it gives white something to bite on. He wants to get through g4, g5 and open up black's king. So here we have the big clash on the board. That's white's strategy, g4, g5, while black looks to play through the middle of the board. Bishop e2 looks funny to retreat that bishop from its nice diagonal, but in fact it's all about controlling this square, so you want to get in this move. Bishop g4 played to stop g4, but anyway, knight h2, and now white is teeing up for g4, g5. But in order to get to this situation, of course, it's not so nice to have the knight back on h2, and that means that black can fill the voids in the middle of the board with his own pieces. So now Caruana starts to activate. So there's, you know, a good give and take here. So the question is, what happens if white just pushes forward with g4? Well, this is a little bit too early, because here black has very serious counterplay with queen, knight and rook on the e file, and there's a little trick here. Queen b5 threatening mate, but also threatening a discovered attack. attack here, check, and the queen is on freeze. So that is a good practical reason why advancing the g-pawn at the moment is a mistake. So Carlsen invested a little bit of time here and played bishop c1. Good move, just tucking that bishop out of the way. Also protects the king, that vital square. And bishops are often very well placed on the back rank. Just a very tidy move. Queen c6 anyway, starting to get counterplay. And yes, as before, g4 not advisable. So f4. Carlsen boots this knight out of the way and moves the queen. So obviously queen b5 has no effect in this position, but queen e4. So Caruana managing at least to exchange queens, and that will just minimize any danger in the position on the king side. But Carlsen continues anyway. Knight e3. So Caruana still looking for counterplay in the middle. And this knight floats back to d5. And Carlsen makes a very interesting decision here, and it's clear that after this next move he is very ambitious. If white wants to sit there, then fine. Then neither side will have any particular difficulties. But Carlsen takes the rook away from the open file and concentrates his firepower on the king side. So it's a very committal move, of course, but a strong move. Nevertheless, I think Caruana should carry on like this. And although white has some initiative, feels to me as though black should be okay in this position. But rook e6 played by Caruana. And he had obviously overlooked something, because now Carlsen's initiative takes on serious weight here. And around about this time, Magnus obviously thought he was doing very well. He is. And he went into the confessional booth that they have in the SINQUEFIELD Cup. You can go in there and make a little recording. You can state your thoughts in front of a camera. But here, when Carlsen went in, he didn't say anything. He just did this to the camera. So it's this kind of hush that sports stars often do, or football players when they've scored a goal. It's like hushing the opposition. Can't say anything now. But like I said, normally this is done, for instance, after you score a goal. But Carlsen, obviously seized by hubris, thought he was going to win and went in and did this to hush the haters. But that puts extra pressure on yourself, of course. And over the next couple of moves, things didn't quite go as Carlsen wanted. Okay, let's look at the position. f5 from Carlsen. Hitting the rook, that bishop coming into play. Caruana had simply overlooked a tactic in this position. He didn't think that f5 was possible. He thought he could take here, but no, that loses very sweetly to knight g4. And the main point is, if rook takes rook, we give a check, and then a checkmate. Beautiful stuff. So that rook had to go back to h7, which looks really quite bizarre. But actually, I mean, the rook isn't too badly placed. After all, this is an isolated pawn, and it does protect g7. But obviously, black is going backwards here, and it's not great. And here, Carlsen plays knight g4, but he messed up. He should play f6 here. Now, a lot of people online are saying this is a winning move. That might be pushing it a bit. It certainly gives white very good chances, and will when we compare with the game continuation in a second, we'll see why it's important to get the move in this order. F6 and knight g4. Okay, first of all, there's a pin. So I repeat, this was not the game continuation, but Carlsen should have done this. Now, if knight d5, then the knight comes in, king steps aside out of the pin, but this is tremendous for white now. And the main idea is that we can push this knight, we take here, and now black's rook is really trapped on h7. You can play knight f6 straight away, but this is the strongest. And after this exchange, you can see traps the rook on h7 and hits that one to boot in this variation. So this is just winning material, basically. But after f6, knight f5 is a strong continuation. And I wouldn't say that white is winning here. It's a very promising position, but it's not yet winning. There are a couple of things you could try. Carlsen said after the game that he was looking at this and couldn't quite see a way to crack it. And I think, yeah, it would be difficult to. All you can say is that white has a great initiative. So, for example, after this, the knight goes back, bring the knight back into play, and rook b5 is interesting. Let's swing that one across. Pawn takes pawn, and now we can take here and take on b7, for example. Promising for white. This rook, dearie me, dare I say it, split rooks. But then again, white's rooks are split too. But this rook can come back into play, and well, even against this pawn here, white is definitely better here, no doubt about that. But there's still some way to go. There are other ways to play. You could play knight f3 and play the knight in here. Take this, and you know, white has a tremendous position, but it's not yet over. But this was certainly the way to play. Instead, Carlsen played knight g4, which looks really powerful, threatening a check. And then he played f6. And I think it's understandable that he thought he was probably winning this position, but he'd underestimated this extraordinary move, knight g8. I mean, what a comical situation that black is in here. And yet, this is a very strong defensive formation. For example, if we try to play as in that previous variation with bishop g5, in fact, that knight covers these squares beautifully. And in fact, it's not possible for white to break through in this position. The rook number 2 comes over and covers some squares, and black is holding firm here. Even that rook, it's actually doing a decent job here, attacking that pawn. So instead, Carlsen took on g7. But he said after the game he realized that things weren't going his way here. He couldn't see a way through, and there doesn't appear to be a clear way through. Threatening bishop d4 on a pin. So that was stopped. Bishop f4, but you can see things just aren't critical now for black. And after these moves, black is really finding his feet. That rook comes into play, covers some very important squares, and now black starts to go forward. The real threats are over here. Well, Carlsen tried to create something tricky with this knight here, but Caruana held firm. Remember, yeah, there's black is pretty well centralized now, actually. Now, watch out, can't take this yet because of this. And after this, the players actually just repeated the position a few times. Carlsen couldn't see a way forward. And that was the end of that. They agreed to a draw. a tricky game, very tricky game. You know, Carlsen, I guess, could be pleased that he got some kind of initiative here. And Caruana said after the game, considering the position, this was a great result. Yeah, I think Caruana, in a sense, can feel better than Carlsen after this game, because he had to dig deep and found a decent defense in the end. For Carlsen, he was obviously very disappointed after the game, particularly after this Hush incident, which just makes him look a bit foolish, actually. It's kind of fun, it's spicing things up, but as I said, I think it puts more pressure on yourself if you do something like that. Carlsen said afterwards, the problem is, in all my games, I'm not being practical. I just can't make up my mind, can't follow my intuition and make decisions. Normally his decision making is his big strength. He normally makes big decisions very quickly. But I think in this game, this was still very tricky to find this win in inverted commas. It's not so clear, and it takes such precision to put away a position like this, actually. Anyway, intriguing stuff. Carlsen remains at number 1 on the live rating list, and Caruana remains at number 1 in the tournament. So we've got 2 more rounds. Do check out my reports coming soon, and thanks for watching.